or felt like impostor syndrome? Do you know what that is? What about feeling like you're an overachiever? We might as well, and voiceover talent. I was also at one time a syndicated radio show host. So today I wanted to talk to you about my life from 40 to 50. Yes, it's true. I am over 50, and so if you didn't know that, now you know. But there's a lot of things that I went through my life, and again, I am bringing this to light to make sure that people know online that they can trust me and to work with me, because I've owned businesses for almost 17 years where everything was word of mouth. And now I'm moving to online business, and I'm finding it's a little bit different than usual. So, just a little recap. If you haven't watched all of my origin stories, I'll give you a little recap. First of all, I was coddled as a child, right? Everyone loved to dress me up and put me in little outfits. But then, up till 10 years old, I was mercilessly just treated terribly by children and was teased. So if you know what that feels like, I also went through that as well. And then I'd say I experienced rejection and not enoughness in my high school years. In my young 20s, I was moving into working too much, so overworking, and that getting stabbed in the back by corporate people a lot was a thing, and that was happening to me. A lot of people taking my ideas and presenting them as their own. And then, from my 30 to 40s, my perfectionism was starting to rise. So that's a quick little recap. But if we were to start with the 40 to 50 area, we would say three things were going well. Number one, I was a freebird. I did not date anyone for 7 years. I'm not even sure if you know how that's possible, but I didn't. And it was really interesting because I felt free. I didn't want to be told what to do. I didn't want to have that kind of relationship thing going on, and I just did whatever I wanted. I traveled extensively, lots of times with my mother. She was my favorite roommate and travel buddy. And my business was doing really well. My in-person business, meaning, someone would come in and say, Rose, I need to work with you. And I'd say, no problem, let's work together. We would, and then we were done. Someone else would come in. Rose, I need to work with you. It was just all word of mouth. And my business was going quite well. Until 2019, in the beginning of that year, my mother passed away, and that was a really difficult time for me. I would say the one thing that I was glad for in that situation, and a situation that's as hard as that, is that I got to hold my mother's hand while she passed away. It was a very intense time for me. Although I come from a family with half sisters and brothers, it was really up to me to do all of the work with regards to the funeral, selling her property. It was quite a lot. So when I had met a colleague who was going on a trip around the world with 2 other people, I decided to join him and these other gals that were going. So I went on a trip around the world. Ooh, the lighting in this room. Don't you love that? I'm like, oh, hello. I'm at the Cloudvale Hotel, which if you didn't know, there actually is a mountain in the Tetons called Cloudvale. Yep, and I know this because I date a guy now who is an extreme skier, and he knows every single peak name, every single couloir name, everything about anything to do with skiing in the Tetons. Anyway, back to my story. So my mother passed away, and I had to sell all her stuff, and it was just a really hard time. And my colleague came to visit Jackson Hole, told me about this trip around the world, so I decided. Actually, I was on the top of Snow King when that happened, and when he asked me to join them, I could literally feel my mother from above, like beaming down at me, saying, go, you'd never go to any of these places by yourself. And it's true. So I did. I left the day after Thanksgiving in 2019, and I flew to Beijing, China, which, as you know, that's where COVID started. Well, I think I should do a live just about my trip around the world because it was extremely exciting and there's so much to say about it. But let's just say I went to China, India, Jordan. I was visiting a lot of the World Heritage sites. So I was at the Great Wall of China, Petra, and a bunch of other places. I can't even remember, right? I'd have to go back to my pictures to take a look. But I visited friends in Italy for New Year's, and then I went to Germany after New Year's. Then I went to New York to visit my family, because that's where I'm originally from. And when I went there, I stayed in New York City for 3 nights. That was really exciting, because I'd never really done that. And after that, I took a flight to the Bahamas to land on the day that my mother had died a year before that. And I spent 10 days in the Caribbean enjoying myself in an all-inclusive. And then that ended my trip. So it was about 2 months long. And it was really fun because, I was traveling all around and there was a lot of things going on in the world, including something was happening to change our world, and that was COVID. If you're listening to this, you probably have gone through it too, but everyone had a different experience. I'll probably have to do another video about my COVID experience. But what I was experiencing mostly was that my business was changing, and I wanted to change as well. I had been working with people for, I think, 13 years at that point, and I loved working with people in person, but I knew there were a lot of people out in the cyberspace, right, out in the online world that I wanted to help. I wanted to make a bigger impact. So I started thinking about my business and how I would change it. Now, I was in the social media business for, well, if you include now, it's like almost 17 years. And I was in it when people thought it was a fad, right? People were like, Rose, what are you talking about? Facebook in my business, that's a bunch of hooey. But as it turns out, I was correct. Not that being correct was the big thing, but me knowing that that huge wave of social media was coming was a big thing. But I still couldn't let go of the voiceover and the on-camera productions that I did and the MC stuff that I was also being called on for. So my first real bout of imposter syndrome came when I was offered a position as a syndicated radio show host. And a colleague sent it to me. It was an email that they were looking for someone to handle a country music show. And I thought, well, Rose, you don't have any experience in the country music world. Like, who are you to go ahead and be a host of a whole show that's about country music? That was the first inkling I had. And then I thought, well, I'm just not that good. Like, I'm not good enough to be a syndicated radio show host. And I let that email sit in my inbox for probably about 5-ish days. And one night I was having a glass of wine and I was like, what emails haven't I responded to? And I saw that email and I thought, you know what? I'm gonna go ahead and submit all my stuff anyway, because who knows, right? Like, maybe there's the slightest chance that I could be picked. And what happened? The next day, I literally got an email that said in capital letters, "We want you." I couldn't believe what I was even reading. The person I called was my colleague to tell him that I had gotten the job, but I was really afraid deep inside. In fact, I was so afraid that I kept that a secret from everyone I knew, except for my colleague, obviously, for a month. Can you even imagine keeping such amazing news like that from everyone you know for an entire month? Because I struggled. I struggled with this imposter syndrome. The whole country music thing, the whole am I really that good thing, that whole who am I thing. But this is how Jackson Hole Rose came to life, right? Because my show was called Yellowstone Country. And I thought, you know what? With Jackson Hole Rose, yes, that's what it needs to be. So I trademarked my name, which was a good thing at the time. Now, of course, I'm not using it for a lot of things at the moment, but it's always there because my name is trademarked as Jackson Hole Rose. But another thing was, so I was doing this show, right? I was doing this as a syndicated radio show host. I was loving it. having a great time doing it. I was also working with a colleague from iHeartRadio. He was producing all the shows. It was an amazing time because we were really hoping that it would come together as something amazing for the world, right? I mean, how could it go wrong? Yellowstone Country with Jackson Hole Rose? Well, what happened is the syndicators were not paying me, and that was a problem. And so I had tried to work through the problem in several ways. I even went to Nashville to try and talk with other people that knew about country music and radio and what I should do in this situation because I felt like I didn't know what to do. And I found my answer out, which wasn't the greatest answer in the world, but it was, you can't work for someone that's not gonna pay you. So I had this in my mind, right, as a gentleman called me from a TV station. And he said, Rose, I'd like to have, like a Zoom meeting with you. And I said, sure, no problem. So we get on the phone, and he says, we get on the horn, the Zoom, whatever, we're looking at each other. And he says, I want to offer you a live streaming show. And I looked at him, and I thought, okay, this guy's nuts. And I said, well, you have the wrong gal because I'm in radio. And he said to me immediately, no, I don't. I know I have the right gal because I've been watching you. And I thought, wow, that's crazy. You've been watching me? Okay. Like first I'm thinking, crazy, but that's not really where he was headed with that. He'd been watching me do all kinds of different things, and my voice, in addition to what I looked like, my background in acting and other things like that. And so he had said, no, really, like I am gonna be launching Jackson Hole Television in Jackson Hole, and I want you to be a main part of it. And I mean, I slept on this for a couple days, because I was like, yeah, I'll think about it. And I thought about it, and I thought about going all the way back to my childhood and how I went to school for TV and radio, and what my father said to me, you'll live out of a dumpster if you think that you can make anything of yourself on TV or radio. And I thought, you know what, this guy with 30 years of experience, he believes in me. He thinks that I could actually have a live streaming show. What if I were to believe that I could have a live streaming show? And then it was from that point on, it was like on, like Donkey Kong. I was like, okay, here's I'm writing up a proposal and write this contract, and you're gonna pay me this much, and I'm gonna do these types of videos for you, I'm gonna script these out, I'm gonna record these, we're gonna film over here, we're gonna go up to the top of Snow King, we're gonna do all the things, right? So I was super excited, and it was good. It was good for a time. But then what happened was this gentleman started getting weird with me. And in weird, I wasn't really sure where he was going with things. And he mentioned to me, well, what if I die? And I thought, why are we talking about this? Like, what are you saying to me? I didn't really think much of it until I found out that he sold the radio station. Because I just thought he, I don't know, had cold feet, like he wanted me to do all these things, and then he was like, nah. But that wasn't the case. What I found out was that this gentleman had 2 types of cancers, and he passed away. And before he passed away, he sold that particular radio station, or that TV station called Jackson Hole TV, and he sold it to someone else who renamed it as a Hispanic channel, which of course I couldn't have any involvement in because I'm not Hispanic and I don't speak Spanish, and I don't think I can ever learn how to do that because my brain doesn't work like that at all. I can sing different languages by memorizing them, but I cannot speak different languages. So I was totally bummed, but also bummed that I had found out that he just didn't tell me that he was dying. It kind of changed everything for me, and I thought on things. And what I thought most about was other women and how I was presented with this opportunity to be on live streaming television, and I was agreeing to do it. So really what happened there was I had an aha moment that I wanted to help all women across all fields, across all countries, across every age group, if I could, to get on camera. And not just be on camera, but do live streaming like I'm doing now. yeah, that's where I had that aha moment. And I feel like this is where my future is. Of course, some other things to note for this period of my life from 40 to 50 was I met my boyfriend G, and he's awesome. I never thought that in the late stages of my life I would find someone so amazing and really be able to connect with someone in that way. Someone needs to put their baby to bed. But I did, and we did, and we still are. And our anniversary is on Valentine's Day. I know it's kind of sappy, but we do have a really fun story. I'll have to do a live on that one. But I turned 50 last year, and I went big. I went to Africa. That was one of the most exciting things and trips that I've ever done for myself. And now I am shifting my whole career to work on helping with women only. I've worked with men and women over the years, but I really feel like women are the most challenged in the deepest parts of their soul about going on camera. And I want to be a difference for them. I want to show them that it is possible, they can do it, and they can do it regularly, to have people trust them. And remember, that's why I'm doing this, so that you trust me in being an honest person of who I am, how everything basically became full circle, which if you watch all the videos, I think you'll know how that happens. I'm going to try AI next week and see if I can combine all of those videos into one origin story, see how it looks. We'll see how it looks. So what's next, right? For me, it's letting go of all the things. I already talked about perfectionism in my last video. Holy moly, I am a recovering perfectionist every day. You know I love the phrase F perfect, right? And I'd love for you to write that below, because that's one of my things. Anytime anyone uses that word perfect, I'm like, oh, what did you say? Right? Because I don't like that word. I think it should not even be in our regular use of the word, just words in general, right? Like I see women saying, I have the perfect way to, dot, dot, dot. Do you know the perfect way to? No one would ever say, I'm perfect, and by the way. So why do we use that word perfect? Anyway, I also have to let go of being an overachiever. Yes, I've accomplished a lot of things. Oh, there goes that lighting again. Hello. Who's watching me? Anyway, yeah, I feel like this is my next step. Working with people online to really move them into being on camera and doing live streaming, so that way their audience really knows that you're there to support them and answer questions and be a real human. Because with the rise of AI, I feel strongly that live streaming is going to take a front seat instead of a back seat, which it kind of feels like now, once AI starts rising. And believe me, the things that I've heard so far, woo, they're pretty crazy. And yep, I'll probably have to do a video on that too, like what things I've seen in AI that will do for you, right? Like, wow, that's extreme. So anyway, what's next for me? Who knows? I can always reinvent myself. I feel like I've lived probably more than 9 lives already, and I've been very lucky to have done that. However, you know, we always say, remember, F perfect. Keep it real and stand out by streaming live, because it is your authentic edge in the AI age.